Hello, everyone. You're listening to Psychology Outside the Box. My name is Dr. Flower. I have a PhD in psychology, so I'm not a wannabe or a knockoff. I've been teaching college and university courses for 20 years. Psychology is a vast field that connects to many things in your life. If you have a curious mind, you're definitely in the right place. So sit back and enjoy the ride. You have probably seen something like this on a computer, TV, or movie screen. A man and a woman are having sex, up against the wall, in a bed, in a car, anywhere, vertically, horizontally, clothed or unclothed. It doesn't matter. Within a minute or so, the man and woman will have an orgasm at the exact same time. It will be spectacular and very satisfying, like fireworks exploding in the brain. The mutual orgasm will be so great that even most of us just watching the screen get the craving for a cigarette, although we have never smoked before. This is not a scene from a Disney movie, but it is still mostly fantasy or fiction. In fact, most women are unlikely to get an orgasm simply because of thrusting or vaginal penetration. That's if they even get an orgasm in the first place. Oh yes, it's absolutely true that women tend to have fewer and less satisfying orgasms than men. There is one exception. Homosexual women have vastly more orgasms during partner sex than heterosexual women. Was that too much information and too fast? Like drinking water from a gushing fire hydrant? Maybe I better slow things down a little bit. Hey, that's exactly what she said. And yes, that line is from the TV show The Office, one of the most popular sitcoms of all time. One phrase from the late 1960s was, "You've come a long way, baby," used as a symbol of women's empowerment. It was a moment of hope for women and was part of the movement for equality. It's been over 60 years since the introduction of that slogan. Things are better than they were back then, but the struggle for equality continues in many different areas. At the core of the 1960s sexual revolution was female sexual empowerment. It fell short of this goal. While the revolution made it acceptable to have sex before marriage, it didn't lead women to have equally pleasurable sexual experiences. Everyone deserves a fulfilling and enjoyable sex life, but there are some key differences that we see in the bedroom. The orgasm gap or pleasure gap refers to the difference between heterosexual men and women in terms of sexual satisfaction. Across every demographic that has been studied, women report the lowest frequency of reaching orgasm during sexual encounters with men. Of course, you do not have to have an orgasm to experience sexual pleasure or other benefits of sex, such as physical closeness or intimacy. Sex can be enjoyable without orgasm too. Orgasms may not be a big deal for all women, and that's completely okay. Have you seen the wonderful 1989 romantic comedy titled When Harry Met Sally? Fast forward to the famous Katz's Deli scene. Billy Crystal as Harry scoffs at the idea that women have ever faked orgasms with him. So Sally, played by Meg Ryan, right there in the crowded deli starts to moan, pound the table, and scream to demonstrate how an orgasm can be faked. Most women, at one time or another, have faked it, she says. Sally's right. 67% of heterosexual women admitted to occasionally faking orgasm in a study published in Volume 47 of the Journal of Sex Research. Women fake orgasms by making corresponding sounds, like moaning or gasping. And like Harry in the above movie, most men don't believe it could happen to them, with only 20% saying they think their female partners might fake. It's true that women can fake an orgasm, but men are even more talented. They can fake an entire relationship. In 1976, Sherry Height published results from a survey of 3,000 women aged 14 to 78. Her book, called The Height Report, was translated into a dozen languages and sold more than 48 million copies. Almost all of the women said that they had orgasms regularly from masturbation, but only about 30% said that they had orgasms regularly from penis-vagina intercourse. A 2018 study on orgasms in heterosexual newlywed couples found that 87% of husbands and only 49% of wives reported consistently experiencing orgasms during sexual activity. Research in the Archives of Sexual Behavior looked at over 52,500 adults in the U.S., including those who are lesbian, gay, and bisexual. Only 65% of heterosexual women reported that they usually or always had satisfying orgasms during sex, compared to 95% of heterosexual men. In contrast, 86% of lesbian women had great orgasms. In Finland, 5 national sex surveys that are based on random samples from the Central Population Register have been conducted. Each survey included approximately 2,200 women from the general population. It is of particular note that in 2015, only 38% of young women reported that they usually had an orgasm during intercourse, whereas 43% said that they had an orgasm fairly infrequently at most. So it appears that for many guys, orgasms are like opinions. Mine is more important, and I don't really care if you have one. Since women tend to have fewer orgasms than men overall, women may put less emphasis on the importance of orgasm for their sexual satisfaction compared to men. Unfortunately, this cycle of inequality likely repeats rather than improves within a relationship, when women who orgasm less often reduce the importance they place on this kind of sexual pleasure. So it certainly appears that many women have fewer orgasms and a less satisfying experience during intercourse. Paula England, a sociology professor at Stanford University, believes that the orgasm gap is an inequity that's as serious as the pay gap. Just like with wages, women get fewer rewards during sex even though they're doing the same work. So why is there an orgasm gap? Why are mutual orgasms so hard? That's what she said. In fact, there may be several reasons, but the main one is cultural ignorance. Despite approximately half the world's population being born with a clitoris, this sexual organ is not talked about very much, and until very recently, even the information that we might have found about it in textbooks was incorrect or misleading. The clitoris is a pleasure-producing sexual organ that is the female equivalent of the penis. Although it carries the same importance in sexual functioning, the clitoris has been much less widely studied than the penis. Researcher Laurie Mintz, Ph.D., argues that the primary reason for this form of gender inequality is due to our cultural ignorance of the clitoris, and that it is commonplace to mislabel women's genitals by the one part, the vagina, that gives men, but not women, reliable orgasms. Mintz continues by saying she is fighting against the false belief that orgasms from vaginal penetration, including the G-spot, are better, when in fact the vast majority of women need clitoral stimulation to climax. According to researcher Jessica Wood of the Canadian Journal of Human Sexuality, traditionally heterosexual women are placed in passive, submissive role of the giver, while heterosexual men are placed in the dominant role of the receiver. A classic and widely read article by feminist writer Anne Cote, that's Koedt, in 1970 was titled The Myth of the Vaginal Orgasm. As she explained, in the past, frigidity was defined by men as the failure of women to have vaginal orgasms. But this problem had very little to do with the woman's ability to enjoy sex. Actually, the vagina is not a highly sensitive area and is not built to achieve a powerful orgasm. It is the clitoris which is the center of sexual sensitivity and which is the female equivalent of the penis. The clitoris is not quite in the right place for getting to climax during penetration. Men have orgasms by friction with the vagina, not the clitoral area, which is external and not able to cause friction the way penetration does. Women have thus been defined sexually in terms of what is most pleasing to men. Although there are many areas for sexual arousal, there's only one area for sexual climax, and that is the clitoris. All orgasms are extensions of sensation from this area. But the clitoris is not necessarily stimulated sufficiently in conventional sexual positions. So the main reason for the orgasm gap is that women are not getting the clitoral stimulation they need and deserve. Of course, some men absolutely know what's up down there, and if you found one of these guys, marry him immediately. Faking an orgasm can be quite difficult. It would be a lot simpler and easier for the woman just to say, "Hey, it's called a clitoris and it's right here." The true nature of the clitoris was brought to public attention in 2003 by researcher Dr. Helen O'Connell. A lot of people go on thinking that this little love nub is all there is to it, but that's just not true. Only about 25% of the clitoris is showing, and the rest extends back into your body, making a wishbone shape that is about 3 or 4 inches long. Just because you can't see the rest does not mean it isn't there. The actual dimensions of the clitoris were unknown until 2009, when French researchers created a life-size 3D printed model of the pleasure center. Although this organ may be the key that unlocks female sexual pleasure, it is not just a little hill, as it has long been believed. In fact, the little hill is just the visible tip of the much larger organ that is the clitoris. That tip, or glans, is a few inches above the opening of your vagina and right in between where your labia meet at the top. The glans is filled with nerve endings that make it incredibly sensitive. Your labia, or inner vaginal lips, form a hood for your clitoris. It turns out that all orgasms are clitoral, according to sex therapist Holly Richmond, PhD. They discovered that the clitoris has nerve endings expanding all through the vagina and pelvic floor muscles. The most recent estimate indicates that the human clitoris contains about 10,300 nerve endings. This exceeds the previous estimate of 8,000 that was based on a study of cows and not humans. This number of 10,300 is more than twice as many as the penis. If we consider the entire pelvic area, a woman has roughly 15,000 nerve endings. Now just imagine, guys, if your penis was capable of feeling twice as much pleasure as it does. Sigmund Freud believed that women have penis envy. I don't think so, because women already have an amazing clitoris. It is much more correct to say that men should have clitoris envy. And so I'll be the very first guy to admit that I want my very own clitoris. And with that, my big chance for multiple orgasms. As much as men are really impressed with their own penis when it comes to sensation, females win, hands down. And when I say hands down, you know exactly where I'm talking about. Yes, my lovely listeners, I'm referring to female masturbation. Sure, exercise is a great way to relieve stress and improve your sleep, but so is enjoying a little one-on-one time with you and your body. Masturbating is pleasurable, so enjoy the journey of finding out what works for you. Most women use their fingers to play with their clitoris, but vibrators and other toys can also bring pleasure. You can use your fingers or a sex toy to penetrate your vagina or for anal play. So set the mood, add some lube, take your time, and play with your erogenous zones. The good thing about masturbation is that you don't have to get dressed up for it. The vagina is the muscular tube that links to the cervix, which is the lower part of the uterus. Also called the birth canal, the vagina allows for the passage of blood and cells in menstruation, the introduction of sperm during sex, and the delivery of the baby and placenta at the end of pregnancy. Its major function is related to reproduction and not pleasure. But why does the vagina have so very few nerve endings? We believe it is designed this way to help women cope with the pain of childbirth. In other words, more nerve endings in the vagina would produce a lot more pain during delivery of the baby. So fewer nerve endings means less pain, but also much less pleasure during intercourse. The penis and the clitoris are similar structures. The clitoris is just a little penis, and a penis is just a bigger clitoris. In fact, the clitoris originates from the same mass of tissue in the embryo that gives rise to the penis. The penis plays several roles, including sex, urination, and releasing sperm for reproduction, while the clitoris has only one job, creating pleasure, which may lead to orgasm. During sexual arousal, and particularly clitoral stimulation, the vaginal walls lubricate to reduce friction caused by sexual activity. The vagina gets moist to make an easier entrance for the penis. The inner texture of the vagina creates friction for the penis during intercourse. With arousal, the vagina lengthens rapidly to an average of about 4 inches, which is about 10 centimeters, and can continue to lengthen in response to pressure. As the woman becomes fully aroused, the vagina expands in length and width. The walls of the vagina are composed of soft, elastic folds of mucous membrane, which stretch or contract with support from pelvic muscles to the size of the inserted penis or other object, stimulating the penis and helping the male to experience orgasm and ejaculation. It is a big myth that penis-vagina penetration is the best way for women to achieve orgasm. While this may be true for some people with vaginas, many more females experience higher sexual arousal following the stimulation of the clitoris. The lower third of a woman's vagina definitely provides some pleasurable sensation. However, the vagina as a whole has insufficient nerve endings for sexual stimulation and orgasm. Although the vagina is so awesome, the clitoris is where the action is. Only a minority of women can have an orgasm through vaginal penetration alone. Approximately 60% to 70% of women who have orgasms need to have their clitoris touched in order to climax. There is still confusion and controversy about the relationship between the clitoris and the G-spot or Grafenberg spot. The G-spot refers to a region just a few inches inside your vagina that may feel especially pleasurable when stimulated. You may be able to feel it by inserting a finger into your vagina and making a come hither motion in the direction of your front vaginal wall. There is still no good scientific evidence to prove its existence, although plenty of women believe they have one. This spot may feel pleasurable because it's where the vestibular bulbs of your clitoris rub up against the vaginal wall, and so pressure on the vagina during sexual activity can actually result in clitoral stimulation. If this is the case, vaginal orgasms may actually be closely related to clitoral stimulation. Not every woman cares if she has an orgasm during vaginal sex, or even at all. However, for people who want to have more intense orgasms, the research is clear. Orgasm during penetration is far more likely if it includes clitoral stimulation. It appears that the importance of women finishing or feeling pleasure is considered less important than a man reaching the finish line. The media largely contributes to the orgasm gap, as publications like Cosmo teach many young sexual readers that pleasing your man is at the top of the list. The probability of young men reading magazines about pleasing a woman is rather slim. Nonetheless, the man's orgasm is no more important than a woman's. Having an orgasm with your partner should involve lots of communication before and during, not just after. And I am not just referring to dirty talk during sex, although that's okay too. Women should have the opportunity to discuss the satisfaction they want, whether it's a hookup, a relationship, or a marriage. Women should not ignore their own desires. Sexual stimulation should not be one-sided, especially if you are pleasing your partner in hopes of getting something back. This is where dialogue is key and necessary. But even something as simple as discussing the satisfaction that you want can be made to look like something undesirable. Stereotypes remain a huge barrier. It's not ladylike to be bossy. It's aggressive to be assertive, and nobody likes an angry feminist. Efforts to close the equality gap between men and women have made strides in the past few decades. Yet despite these advances, women still struggle with inequality in the workplace, in marriage, sexual harassment and partner abuse, and even their sex lives. Certainly, women are entitled to freedom from sexual harassment and abuse, but they also deserve pleasure in the bedroom. Let's shatter these glass ceilings across all gaps. When a woman has sex, especially with a man, she is entitled to talk about what they are putting into it and getting in return. We must encourage women to advocate for their own pleasure more and to encourage men to ask about their partner's pleasure. Orgasm equality will increase sexual satisfaction in the bedroom, and better sex will mean a much better relationship as well. It's a win-win situation. We should really start by calling it an OURgasm. That's OURGASM instead of orgasm. Pass it on if you think that's a good idea. And my last piece of advice, why not make someone truly happy? Be an orgasm donor today. All good things must come to an end, including this podcast. But in the words of the Terminator, I'll be back. And I hope you will too. Okay, folks, it's all over for today. We're finished. We reached the end. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I will miss you so very much.